So, I'm not going to wait to get into Chapter 3. Here it is, Chapter 3 of The Lost Girls. As I said in the previous video, I recorded about a half an hour ago at this point, it is based on The Lost Boys from 1987. It is written by Scroll, who often goes by Quill Scroll, but only Scroll on FimFiction. And it is a story about lightning dust. It is written in a first-person perspective through either most chapters or all of them. But the prologue, which is one I still have to actually produce for this series, is it was a letter. It was written as a letter to Princess Celestia, who is, by this time in the story, I guess, is retired. So that means the leader of Equestria is actually Twilight Sparkle, but is not the pony that he has been working with. So anyway, this is Chapter 3, Bittersweet Nostalgia. So we might be in for a rough ride with this one. Who knows? I mean, like, emotionally. As per usual, as I read through it, I'm probably going to pause here and there to comment on things, and I will try my best to explain myself on those comments, okay? Okay. I absently lay my head against the head of the guitar while the guitar's neck rests on my left shoulder. During this time, I cease playing for a moment as I feel a wave of, I can almost describe it like dizziness, but it's more accurate to say intense apathy. What? I'm trying to figure out. Are dizziness and intense apathy actually similar, synonymous with one another? It confuses me. To me, it doesn't make sense. Okay, if you don't care, then it's more like a bout of depression, possibly. Or it's just, you've hit a breaking point. But you started off describing it as like dizziness and then said more intense apathy. So I'm a little confused. Anyway, I just feel too depressed to care about doing anything. Yet something tugs at my heartstrings and compels me to move forward, at least inwardly. It feels like a long shot, but if I mentally go over each phase of my downfall, maybe I can more accurately pinpoint what went wrong. Better yet, if there is something I can do to make things better. I release a long, painful sigh, then lift my head up again, though I still keep my eyes closed. I resume playing the guitar. As I do so, I dwell on what happened to me next. What the hell? Well, I guess the next phase of my life is obvious. After receiving the letter about my younger sister's degenerating condition, I went home. The only positive thing I can say about my experience of returning home was largely two things. One, nostalgia, and two, seeing my young sister again, although the latter was quite a bittersweet experience. In fact, that basically summed up my entire emotional experience upon returning home. Bittersweet. I feel like this should be a colon and not a semicolon. In fact, I'm confident that that should be the case. Semicolon is more often used to denote the beginning of like a listed out section that is also intended to be separated from the other body of the sentence. It is not, however, meant to emphasize the point of the beginning of the sentence in this way. It was nice to see my old stomping grounds, but it also made me recall why I felt so bitter about it. We were one of those Pegasi who lived on the ground. I always resented that fact ever since we moved there. I actually remember growing up during the early part of my youth, secretly resenting my younger sister because I blamed her for us living on the ground because of her physical disabilities. It's getting harder and harder to like you. The farmhouse was in some disarray and disrepair when I got back. It didn't exactly feel welcoming, but I understood why it was that way. Cleaning up the whole place was something my little sister hardly could ever do. I don't know why that feels so awkward coming out, but okay. Now that our folks passed away and Sweet got even worse, this only made sense. As I trotted into the farm and looked around, all I could feel was the fact that all of this, all I could, wow, let me try that again. I completely blundered that. As I trotted into the farm and looked around, all I could feel was the fact that all of this was a reminder of my failure. I was once proud to fly away from this place and strike it out on my own, and I did a very good job of that too. Sure, I drifted from job to job for quite some time, but I still made it on my own. I was out there, flying. I'm so good at missing out words. I was especially proud of myself when I landed in a position of the Wonderbolt recruits. I never doubted that I'd get there before that point. It was only a question as to when it would happen. When I was kicked out, I had no backup plan except this. Returning here to this farm was my absolute last resort. I knew that safety net was always there, but considering how liberating it felt when I first left this place, I simply knew I'd feel like a failure if I was ever forced to return home. But there I was, right back where I started, and pulled there under circumstances I hadn't even considered before. I returned there, not for the sake of my own failures, but somebody else's. My rational side told me there was no pony to blame here, but there were only victims here, not aggressors. But my emotions insisted there needed to be a target for all of my frustration and rage. It was just too strong to disappear on its own. Sweet Charity didn't change too much, not beyond the point of recognition. She still was that same small yellow pony with brown, unkempt is another word, but I don't think this is invalid or wrong, so unkempt mane and tail, because my sister never saw a point in trying to make herself look good. She figured no pony would romantically want her anyway. That's sad. On the other hand, she was a bit more chubby since last time I saw her, especially in the cheek area. I see. Beyond all of that, though, the wheelchair she was in and the large, round, nerdy-looking glasses that visibly magnified her eyes were all new. But I expected all of this because of the letters I received over the years. The wheelchair was the newest addition. And as for the glasses, she got several years ago because she read and wrote a great deal. Sweet Charity was a fiction romance author and poet. Ooh, cool. I really didn't want to lash out at her for causing all of this, so I mostly didn't. Okay. Instead, I was more distant, cold, and silent, but not totally. So you're just going for the passive-aggressive type of lashing out. That's what you mean by mostly. I tried not to make it obvious. For example, I responded to her and answered her questions. So that's neither distant nor silent. My responses were short, and I refused to look her in the eyes. But you got the cold part down pat. At least for a while. I acknowledged her. That was pretty much it at first. Okay. I recall that once I got inside the farmhouse, I flew up to this high perch I often took when I used to live there. It was a sideways oval window with iron bars over it that kind of looked like an eye. This was one of two windows that looked like this, so from the outside of the house it looked like the house gazed out at any pony on the forward end of it. Well, do you know what that resembles? I'll show you what it resembles. This is actually close to me. In fact, it was just down the street from from the mental hospital I once found myself in. Now, it's not that it had oval windows. Okay, that's too late of a picture. I need the actual one here. Hold on. There's the classic house. Oh God. What did I just... open... Okay. Oh God, a thumbnail. Come on. That's just not loading. So, okay, so up here, and here, these two windows were made legendary. First of all, because they are were part of the Amityville Horror House. They have been changed quite some time ago in order to make the house more difficult to recognize. It did get an awful lot more attention that was strictly healthy for it, and anybody that was living there, since it wasn't a haunted house. The horror was in the supposed mental breakdown of one of the original residents and the homicide of his entire family, which I think may have been a work of fiction. But anyway, and I might be wrong. Quote me on it if you want and tell me I'm wrong. So these two windows here were in certain documentaries described as being something like eyes, something like making or giving the house the appearance of gazing over people. Let me see if I can pull this one up, because in new tab, and how big are you? Beautiful. So, and these do feature in the Amityville horror movies. This was one of the most prominent and distinctive features of this house, was these two curious windows. And yes, the house had in a documentary at least been described as appearing to gaze out over. Is there a body of water to the south? Well, gaze out over the yard, whatever. So, back to that. Okay, I have to, where was I? Because I'm an idiot. So from the outside of the house, it looked like the house gazed out at any pony on the forward end of it. Once, in my foal's eyes, this is confusing, only because it makes it sound like lightning dust has a foal. Intellectually, I understand that she means to say here is, through the eyes of her younger self, I used to be convinced that the house's gaze would always follow me wherever I went. As I sat up there at that windowsill, I rested with my back and wings against one of the oval curve as best I could, but I distinctly remember being a better fit up here in my youth. Fair enough. I gazed out the window too. I liked the... Oh, you're inside. I thought you were outside. I liked the higher perspective I had up here. Here and on the roof of the house. Those were my favorite spots in this house. Are you... Oh wait, so is the windowsill curved, or... I'm just trying to understand it, but anyway. Down below, my sister took up what was our mother's office. It still had some bookshelves full of books in there, but now they were my sister's. More power to her. This always followed closer to our mother's footsteps. Anyway. Not to say I was closer to our father instead, and honestly, no pony in our family followed the path that I did, but that was not a unique situation in various families in Equestria. Unimart destinies could be all over the place. Yeah, it seems like you could argue that Rainbow Dash isn't exactly following in the footsteps of either Bo Hot Hoof or Windy Whistles, either. I heard about your career among the washouts. I recall my sister bringing up the hopes to bring some conversation between us, which was precisely what I didn't want. She sat in her wheelchair in the office as she gazed up. I absolutely agree. Oh, okay, you recall. I had my confusion. It sounded like you were high up, and now you're talking about your sister in the wheelchair being able to get to you. So, but now I understand. This is still reflections. I absolutely agreed. While I continued to gaze out the window, that suggests that in fact she is up with you somehow. I'm sorry, but you make it sound like these two windows are kind of up high, which either means up some stairs or she would have flown to get to them some other how. I guess if you lived on the ground, specifically because of your disabled sister, there would be some provisions in that house for getting to and from the second floor to the first floor, and vice versa. So maybe there's an elevator of some manner. As I did, I had one hoof in the coat pocket of my black leather jacket, which had 1-inch steel spikes over the shoulders of the jacket. My other foreleg was draped over my left bent hind leg. That sounds so exciting, my sister went on. I collected a lot of your various posters and logos, as well as newspaper clippings. You looked so good in that outfit, Sis. It was very sharp. As you approve, I told her absently. Now let me think. I'm trying to get this pose squared away in my head, and it kind of like feels like when one of my cats has leaned forward so that they can prop their hind leg behind the foreleg and properly unseat it, hold it in place, and lick their nuts or crotch, however the case may be, because I have both genders of kitty cat. And that's the kind of visual that I'm getting from this description. It's. So let's see. You're one hoof in the coat pocket of my black leather jacket, which had 1-inch steel spikes over the shoulders of the jacket. By the way, you just used jacket twice in the same sentence. Since we are talking about the black leather jacket right here, I don't think the word jacket, in fact, of the jacket even needs to be here. It feels quite redundant. It will reduce the size of the paragraph, that's true. But you can increase that by maybe specifying which hoof is there. And now my other foreleg was straight over my left bent hind leg. So now the only directionality we have is the left bent hind leg. So your other foreleg, be it your right or your left, is draped over your left bent hind leg. And I just am not understanding this visual very well. It's not coming across to me. Just saying. That sounds so exciting. My sister went on. I collected a lot of your various posters and logos as well as newspaper clippings. You looked so good in that outfit, sis. It was very sharp. I'm glad you approve, I told her absently. I heard it was a very dangerous sport, though, my sister added. I grind my teeth. So, okay. I grind my teeth and press the hoof that was in my coat pocket harder, which caused the leather to creak. So thick or tight leather. I told her as calmly as I could, that's the point of the sport. Okay, so we went from present to past tense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. So really, between the two, 3 words of separation between the present tense and the past tense. I accept that it might be difficult, but how about I ground my teeth and press the hoof that was in my coat pocket harder, which caused the leather to creak. I told her as calmly as I could, that's the point of the sport. I guess that's why it was so exciting, huh? My sister asked me in a reserved way. I remember how much you like to be daring. The kind of sport seems right up your alley. I said nothing to that comment. Okay. You must have really enjoyed it, huh? My sister figured aloud. Again, I said nothing. I just continued to stare out the window. Okay. Lightning is coming across as genuinely bitchy here. Like she made the decision to leave the washouts because it was his sister, but now she comes here and all of her resent is boiling over. And I'm not saying this to criticize the characterization. It's just such wonderful internal conflict where she did decide to come here, but she didn't really express to Rolling Thunder her exact level of actual resent. So her poor sister is going to get the brunt of her passive-aggressive frustrations. However, what happened next I did not ignore. In fact, I finally whipped my head to look at her when I heard her start whimpering. I'm so sorry to be a burden to you, my little sister wailed as she wiped her hooves under her giant, nerdy glasses. Giant. So, something like twist? After what she said and the way she said it, I immediately glided down to her from the upper window sill. Okay, so this is like a shouting conversation, or maybe if the house is quiet enough. I suppose the houses can be said to carry the sound well enough. To her from the upper windowsill, then embraced her in a hug with both my forelegs and wings. As I did so, I downright lied to her when I said, "No, you're not a burden to me." Oh my God. So, you lied to her. It means you feel she is a burden. I don't understand that. Oh, right, whatever. I guess I do understand it. Lightning is rather selfish. Then why can't you look me in the eyes? My sister continued to wail. From what Lightning just is describing, it sounds like she fears that any light which passes through them might magnify so intensely as to set her on fire or melt her own eyeballs were she to do that. I was taken aback by that comment. I soon realized that she was too smart to fall for my tricks. She's not dumb, and I guess I was too obvious. Well, I mean, you were doing the whole broody edgelord thing in the windowsill. Family tends to know a pony the best anyway. Sometimes. The truth was, I didn't want to look her in the eyes because I didn't want her to see that she spoke the absolute, or rather mostly, truth. Well, I guess because of the seated commas, or whatever the hell the term is here, because absolute and truth are the two connected words, and then these two don't actually have to relate but not connect to the other two, syntactically speaking. So I guess that works. She was a burden to me. She was holding me back. From what? You've done plenty. But not purposely, and I knew none of this was her fault. My emotions wanted to blame her for this because of its sheer intensity, but my rational side reigned in that impulse. So the subject, the initial subject, is emotions, which means the possessive pronoun should actually be their sheer intensity, since we're talking about emotions, right? What I'm saying, since she caught me, I thought fast to explain the situation to her in a way that's both honest and comforting. Eventually I said, okay, you caught me. I absolutely am disappointed with these turn of events. These are this turn. It's the word turn that's actually the subject that this is connected to. So this turn of events. But I'll tell you something else that is the truth. Charity, look at me. I insisted before I continued. I waited for her to respond, and for me not to catch on fire. For the first time in years, we locked eyes onto each other. At that point, I wanted to say, it is true that I am bummed out by how things turned out. But I would be even more disappointed with myself if I did nothing in your time of need. I need you to know, Charity, that whatever we have to face together, you're worth it. How many sisters do I have anyway in this world? I feel like the syntax is a little weird here. Like, how many... I'm going to read it, say it differently, just to see how it feels compared to this. How many sisters do I have in this world anyway? Yeah, that flows better to me. It does not come across quite as awkwardly to me. Most importantly for me, it doesn't take me out of the story. Even just in this moment, the reason that I stopped to talk about it was specifically because it came across as awkward. Without that, I'm quite certain and confident that I would have just continued on to this next sentence. Charity stiffed before she answered. Just one. Right, I told her. So that means I have only one target for all of my affection. One pony with whom I need to tend. To whom I need to tend, not with. One pony who helps me to feel fulfilled. Okay? I did give up a lot. I'll admit that. What? You gave up hanging with a group of failures who regularly try to commit suicide? Very, very publicly? I did give up a lot. I'll admit that. But look, I'm still here. Guess what that means when it comes to my priorities? For that comment, my sister smiled at me happily before leaning forward to hug me again. I gladly returned that affection. Okay. All right. This is the thing. The story idea is wonderful. The selection of characters is great. The concept, just overall, is pretty good. We haven't really reached the point at which there's even a reason she should be considering becoming a vampire. Instead, what we have is a reason for her not to do that. On top of staying loyal to her comrades and the washouts and all that stuff, we have now here this sister. There's more story to read, so there's way more opportunity for those reasons to come to light, for justification or reasoning to rear up and demonstrate this is how she became so conflicted and how she ultimately made the choice. We also don't know at the point in the story where she's strumming a guitar just actually how long she has been alive, just how far in the past this actually is. So, which is, it's cleverly done for the narrative, as it sort of makes for an unintentionally unreliable narrator. So anyway, you're worth it. So, no author's notes. It looks like no comments for this one. I'm going to give it an upvote. I realize now that I haven't, I already did. Haven't done that for any of the others. But I guess the upvote applies because of just upvoting the story in general. Yeah, okay, that's enough. So, okay, so back to so far. I'm into chapter 3, which is technically 4 because the prologue is a part of it. I really do have to go back and read that and publish it. But so far my main complaint, it seems to be a weakness, and all the credit in the world to Scroll. He doesn't shy away from it. He continues to write it, and it's good because that will help you to get stronger at it. But I feel like dialogue is a bit of a weakness, and not always. So, like in his other story, Shadow Queen, you have Cozy Glow, who never appeared in EQG, and we never saw above her age as a little filly in MLP. Her dialogue then as sort of a childish kind of a, well, I mean it was a childish, foolish view of the world and approach to her, not only to her strategy, her goals. They weren't super ambitious. They weren't even very sensible. Friendship is power. That was her thing, right? As we said, we never got to see her grow up. In fact, she got turned into stone in by the end of the series. But she had an established personality type, at least. But it is safe to have, well, two things. It is safe to have changed her mannerisms and some of her personality type. One, as she has aged up, and two, as she has grown up under entirely different circumstances. As there is no school of friendship, and no great power to be gotten from friendship in the EQG verse in that way. That's not to say that friendship hasn't had its time to shine and save the day in multiple different Equestria Girls movies or whatever, but it does indicate that it would be different circumstances. So then it stands to reason that her personality wouldn't be entirely the same, and it is a great hope that an individual with the intellect like hers wouldn't age to late high school and stay completely childish in her way. So there was a lot about her that Scroll had liberties with. He could craft dialogue with her as though she were just an OC. And in a manner of speaking, that's what she was for that story. What troubles me at times is, except for where accents are being typed up, most character voices kind of feel the same. There's nothing too distinctive about the way that Lightning Dust talks. She's not generally impatient. She tends to explain or elaborate everything that she's saying in almost clinical ways at times. And that is true of a lot of different characters whose dialogue gets written. The other part for me is that this is written in first person, which means all of the narrative should be in her voice. Now, there's plenty of it that is well enough, and it still reads good enough, otherwise I wouldn't actually be doing any of this. See, I'm not here to shit all over this story or the author. But I am hopeful that some of what I say can help strengthen certain areas, teach a few things. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I here and now freely admit that there is much for me to learn. There is always much for me to learn. I'm not, by any stretch of the imagination, perfect at it. I have a whole slew of long fics on my fiction account that have remained unfinished without any status updates of any kind for quite some time. And I'm only just recently getting back to writing, actually co-writing, Scars to Her Beautiful myself. It went for years, or at least about a year and a half, where I didn't really even update anybody. I didn't post any information about what was going on with me. I didn't say a word. But the weakness for me is finishing stories. If I'm writing a short fic, I can generally get there. But all of my long fics, all of them, have remained unfinished. I'm going to finish Scars to her beautiful. And my hope then is from there I can go on to finish other projects that I've started and just kind of fizzled out. I have, and that's. There are other weaknesses to my writing, granted. Setting the scene, I tend to be minimalistic on that, which is not great. So it's kind of like I'll set up a set of characters that are talking, but the way that I do it, they almost end up talking in a void. It's something I want to, and I have to work on. I have to get better at that to set up a scene to put. So here we have a house. We have a house with particular distinctive designs of oval windows. We have a reason for that house being on the ground for a Pegasus family. We have a lot of detail that helps us to understand just everything about it. We may not know like the color of the house, but we have heard it called a farmhouse, so we know that the nearest neighbor isn't exactly close by. You know, so we have an idea that it might be larger yet still kind of humble house. You know, maybe with more woodland floors than carpeted, all that stuff. We have enough information to kind of generate the scene in our head. Now, I repeat that that I am having no luck at all actually picturing this pose beyond taking one of my cats and just thinking of them licking their crotch with their hind leg propped up behind their foreleg and behind their head. Which is such an odd thing for Lightning Dust to do to her sister. So yeah, this one it's left me a little confused, a little unsure of what exactly she is doing, how exactly it is that she's sitting. Then the other question I have is, since these windows seem to be up high, does that mean that these two are shouting their conversation from the second floor to the first floor? I get not as much indication that they're raising their voices or anything, but because it's almost like the two of them are having a conversation when they're nearby. Like the sister goes on to ask, why won't you look at me? And my thinking is, because she's on a separate floor from you. You're practically shouting to each other right now. So I'm trying to understand where the players are in this scene, and you know, just exactly what this pose actually looks like, because I'm genuinely not getting it. I am confident that Scroll had a very clear idea of what he meant in his head when he wrote this, but I'm not personally understanding it. So there's, you know, little tidbits like the Amityville Horror reference, whether or not it was intentional, being in there. And you know, a little bit more development on Lightning Dust's character in general. There were moments where she was more endearing to me as the reader. When I got through with this chapter, she lost a lot of ground with me. I stopped liking her all that much. There's not much that she has said or done in this that has led me to show her any respect. Even, granted, with these last several paragraphs, where she's kind of telling her sister, well, the objective ought ideally would have been to contradict the whole burden. But I appreciate that she was honest right here. Okay, you caught me. I absolutely am disappointed with I'm going to say this turn of events, because that's really the correct way to say that, with this turn of events. But I'll tell you something else that is the truth. Charity, look at me. I insisted before I can wait for the. It is true that I am bummed out by how things turned out, but I would be even more disappointed with myself if I did nothing in your time of need. I need you to know, Charity, that whatever we have to face together, you're worth it. Little sisters. Oh, and other than this little odd bit of syntactical chaos, to me it is, anyways. Which again, here's the thing. I stop and I talk about other stuff. On two occasions, when I have an interest in comparing notes to something else. So when I saw the two windows, and I wanted to share that, to me it reminded me of the Amityville Horror House, and very specifically the visual of a house gazing out over neighborhood or whatever was amazing to me. I felt like it was a reference injected into this story that was very cool. And even could be something like a bit of foreshadowing for something. But anyway, then the other moments are when it throws me off. So, in Chapter 2, when Rolling Thunder was identified as a stallion, it threw me off because that wasn't correct. And I did the research. I showed that no, Rolling Thunder is established as a mare, a particularly tall and narrow mare, but a mare. Then I have other issues like syntactical. So when something pulls me or knocks me out of the flow of the story, that's another reason that I stop reading. But there's also, as I said, a positive reason that I will stop reading, and that is because I have something I'm interested to research, to be clear on, to understand. It also could be that a word, a noun, an item has been put into the story or described, and I'm not entirely sure what it is, so I'll go and do a little Google search, look for an image or a description, or go to dictionary.com to find the word, just so I understand what it is that I'm reading. It happens in a lot of different stories, and that usually isn't a bad thing. Learning a new word, for me, learning a new word is a nice experience. I enjoy doing that, and it is an infrequent experience for me. So that's nice. It's her somewhat weak attempt at giving a more positive spin. But she honestly didn't do much to contradict the idea that charity was a burden. Even here, I did give up a lot. I'll admit that. But like I said, I don't know what exactly you gave up. You washed out. You got kicked out of the Wonderbolts. You didn't give that up. You had the washouts. You didn't really necessarily have to give that out. Take a break. Tell them you got to take care of your sister. You won't be able to perform with them. Whatever. It's not like you had to completely disconnect from the group. So that wasn't really something. Your sacrifices are nice. They're just generally more meaningful when you don't announce them like this. But you're being honest, and that is hard not to respect. So, yes, you are at least, and this is correct. You are telling your sister right now, you are number one priority. You are the top of my list. I'm here for you. So you really have done a very good job of showing that, or Scroll has really done a very good job of showing. I can't talk. Of showing that, just despite some of the rough patches in this here chapter, it wasn't initially one. It wasn't initially chapter 3. This fic used to be one massive story of about 50 some odd thousand words. There's nothing wrong with that, but yeah. So I'm just fascinated by the kind of the odd decision, I guess, that was made. I don't know how else to put it. I don't know how else to express it. That's just kind of where I'm at with it, and now I'm just kind of, I don't know, but I'm going to continue reading the story. Not immediately. I'm going to, take a break from doing this. I just did 2 chapters in a row, and I am finding the process in general enjoyable. It's my hope that my feedback is not going to fall on deaf ears or cause too much offense, because I apologize if it does. I'm not meaning to be offensive. I'm just, there are things that would help anybody to improve. Just like I'm grateful for anybody whose feedback. I have got comments on the stories with like whole ass grammar and punctuation lessons for me. I appreciate it. It helps me to improve as a writer to get that. I will say that it was a little forcefully delivered, and I said as much to the user, but it was still very useful advice. It wasn't anything I was about to ignore. So I'm now rambling. So I've said all that I really want to say about this.